So, hello and welcome. This is one of my 60 conversations. And today I have the delight and pleasure to be with the lovely Andrea Morrison, who, when we first came on this call, had a divine light shining right at her. There's obviously some kind of divinity going on there. So, maybe we'll delve into that in a bit. But I would love you to introduce yourself, Andrea, and tell us a little bit about you. You were a guest on our recent summit, which was, oh my gosh, that you went down a storm. So it's absolutely brilliant to be back here talking to you again. So tell us a little bit about you and let's see where
Oh
this goes.
gosh, a little bit about me. Where do I start? Okay, so Andrea Morrison. I'm a coach. I've been coaching now for nearly 10 years. So I'm going to have my 10-year anniversary this year, which is very exciting. And I predominantly work with businesses, particularly with business leaders, so those who own the business or maybe in some kind of senior leadership role. And I help them, to all intents and purposes, help them reach their potential, whatever that means or whatever that looks like for them. But they often will come to me and they'll be stressed and overwhelmed, and they'll be like, I don't enjoy this, and I don't know why I've worked so hard to get to this position, and why do I even own this business? Or there'll be some kind of narrative and experience that they don't like, and then I'll work with them and we'll, yeah, discover a little bit more about how they create that experience and kind of put them in touch with what they already know and who they already are. And we just kind of take it from there, really. So I feel very privileged and very blessed to do the work that I do. I meet some incredible people, and yeah, it's a joy, really, which just, yeah. Sounds a little sappy, doesn't it? But it really is like a joy. I just really love what I do. I love the people that I work with. I'm yeah, just very, very blessed to be able to do it.
Cool. So what sort of things like I can see that we start out on something. I mean, obviously I run my own business, you do, and it is easy and all sorts of things, with our families and there are many things that we start out with and it's a great idea and we're going along, it's great. And then I don't know, without even realizing, we suddenly get somewhere and we're like, well, how the hell did I end up here with, and then whatever it is. So what is it? Talk us through a little bit. What if I came to you and I was in that state with my business and I'm like, oh, I'm hating it. It's all getting too much. I'm overwhelmed. What kind of things might we do together? What might, how might
Oh, goodness. Well, the first thing I the first thing I do, well, this is how I often work with people, is I have a couple of days with them. So we have an intensive and we hang out for 2 days, and it's lovely. And of course, my work is rooted in the human experience, and I liken it to learning how to drive a car. And, I think sometimes you're right, we set off on a journey. I did that in my previous job, if that's what you want to call it. I had this dream. I wanted to be a barrister. Everyone told me I was, not stupid, but kind of stupid for wanting to do that. That I wasn't good enough. I'd never make it. And so it became this thing that I needed to prove to do. And that's what I did. And I practiced for 10 years. So it was my destination, if you like, which is not unlike a lot of people. We set this kind of dream in our head, often when we're quite young, right? This is what I'm going to do. And then it's like we fall asleep at the wheel. It's like we get in our car, nobody really tells us how to drive it. We point it in a particular direction, and before we know it, we're fast asleep. Our gear stick's in reverse. Our mirrors are pointing the wrong way. Our steering wheel is like, locked. And we're kind of doing this weird stuff going on anyway. We're not going in the way we want to go, and we're not having a really nice journey. And so when I first sit down with somebody, often this is the first opportunity they've ever had to really offload how they really feel. And especially for the people that I work with, they're the ones that are holding it all together. Like they can't be seen to lose their heads over this. right? Because everyone else is looking at them for direction, looking at them for the next big decision, or where are we going? They're looking to them for the hope that it's all going to be okay, right? And so they've got this outward exterior, a bit like I was when I was a barrister. It's like, oh yeah, everything's great. I'm smiling.
I got
I'm
this.
really confident. It's all good. You know, whilst inside they feel completely different. And they might not be sleeping at night, they're stressed, they just want it to stop. Like they just want to get off this ride just for a little bit. And so the idea of coming and spending a couple of days with me allows them to have that mental holiday, like
Mm.
a proper mental holiday, because a lot of the people I work, they take their laptops on holiday, they check their emails every day, they've got their phone with them. And so I'm like, no, there's no phones. You do not answer your phone. You do not look at your email. You have a complete break. You stop, you
Mm.
know, and and then we just see where the conversation takes us. I suppose if I had a destination for them over those 2 days, would be for them to understand a little bit more about how they worked and for them to have some insight around that. But if somebody spent 2 days with me and they were just quieter, they'd see things differently anyway. Because we know that that's how that works. So it's not kind of just like the education piece. It's really about giving them a break because I know that when they slow down, everything will look different to them.
Mm. So, do you do you ever outwardly speak about their spiritual nature? Because obviously, you're here speaking to me. We both know that
Yeah.
a lot of what you share is based on some understanding of Sydney Banks and the three principles and those kinds of things. So do you outwardly share that? Do you find or how do you talk to them about their spiritual nature and knowing themselves more
Oh,
in that kind of
yeah. It's it's like a $60 million question, isn't it? It's like it depends on the person you've got in front of you. I think some people are just that they're there already, and that's why they come to me because they want to have that conversation and they can't really have it with anybody else because they're so ingrained in what they perceive to be the business community that they can't have that conversation. Other people kind of will know it, but they've never thought to put a word on it or try to describe it in any way. So it really depends on who I've got in front of me. And without seeming really woolly, I listen to my own wisdom about how to broach that subject with them. I remember what this is what's coming to mind, which is yeah, quite interesting to me. Years ago, I mean, this was literally years ago. I had a particular client, and I had that dilemma. They were um, quite practical about everything, and I wasn't really too sure where they were on the whole kind of spiritual spectrum, shall I say. Now, one of these had just kind of looked me up, booked in, and they'd never been in my community before, and we just started working with each other. And I was kind of, talking to them about, a bit like gut feeling, but I didn't use that word, and nothing was really landing. And I was thinking, oh, I'm not sure. I don't know what to do here. And then I started talking about walking up a mountain, and it was like foggy, and you weren't really sure where you were, but you had a compass, and you could navigate yourself with the compass, and you had to trust that the compass was true because you couldn't see any of the landscape. And in that moment, this client's face just dropped, like literally, like, and they were like, you never guess, but I'm actually training to be a mountain guide. I get what you mean. I know exactly what you're pointing to. And and from that moment, the conversation just changed. Like it completely just transformed it. And I suppose that conversation stayed with me because that was for me, oh, I don't have to figure this stuff out. I don't have to have a form of words. I don't have to have a way. I don't have to have a, or if I have a, a lawyer, this is what I use. Or if I have a banker, this is what I don't have to have any of that. I just have to trust that something else has got my back too. And it will just come to me. And if I share that, that will be on the money. And it happens so many times. Like more, yeah, more times than I would even care to count.
So, what do you think the biggest difference it makes, in the businesses you've worked with and the people that you've worked with? What do you think the biggest difference is that it makes when we understand ourselves more when we understand how we work more?
The biggest difference I see is that levels of self-belief go up massively, massively. Like the trust in themselves is huge. And that makes a huge difference to
Mm.
how they are in the business because they're quieter. And I don't mean like self-belief in terms of like, oh, I'm amazing, I'm brilliant. It's kind of like a knowing that the decision they make is the best decision they can make in that moment,
Mm.
right? Because none of us know whether it's the right decision or not, because like that's just
Mm.
who knows,
Mm.
a
Mm.
right decision on Thursday may turn out a year later to not be a right decision and 10 years later be the best decision ever you made. I mean, that kind of fluctuates.
Mm.
But knowing that, okay, this is the best that I can do given my state of thinking at this moment. And I think when people first come to me, they're very, very noisy and they've got lots of different lenses going on and they're trying to make these decisions looking through, a lens of self-doubt and a lens of, well, this happened before, and a lens of these people think this of me, and a lens of, oh, but what if this happens, or whatever. And they're looking at whatever step they need to take through this distortion.
Mm.
And that makes it incredibly stressful.
Yeah.
Um, and also you don't make a clean decision when you're making a decision in that state because it's not kind of true to you. If you're going ahead with a decision and it's a big decision, say, and deep down you think that you're not very good at what you do, or you're an accidental kind of managing director of a business, this wasn't necessarily what you had planned, or you felt that you've made bad decisions in the past, and so are you the right person? Or if you've got all of that going on and that's in the mix,
Mm.
you're going to make a very different decision than if you didn't have all that going on.
Yeah, I can really relate to and hear that. For me, our business being called Dare to Be You, there's a huge amount of that in the mix. It is like and daring to be you is trusting who you are and the things that seem right to you. Because ultimately, with these kinds of things, like you say, often with what we know in this moment, the best decision may change. The best decision we can make with the information that we have here, we might make a different decision later, but it is trusting ourselves to make the right decision in that moment and trusting, if we have a knowing or a feeling for a decision or that seems right for us, trusting ourselves in that way. And exactly like you say, I can remember years of having this whole trying to take everything into account to before you did that, what will they think and what might they say and what might happen there and what might do. And when we've got that many things on us, it's so difficult. I remember years ago my dad saying something about decisions in that way. He said hindsight is a wonderful thing, And if 10 minutes later or a year later, you look back and you think, oh, I would make a different decision now. He said, that's all well and good with what you know now. But if you went back to the person you were with the knowledge you had with what you knew, you would make the same decision again. And it's
Yeah.
like, and I found that's it. It's like, yeah, we would if we're making the best decision we can in that moment with what we have.
100%. Yeah, because we always are, aren't we? We're always making the best decision that we can, even if our head is full of
Yeah.
lots of stuff, that is the best decision that we can make right then. But I think as well, we just don't know where it fits in the scheme of things. I look back at my life and you think, okay, for example, I mentioned when I was a barrister, when I left that felt like the right decision to do, albeit quite a dramatic exit at the time. It was the right decision to do. You asked me 2 years later, it was, oh my goodness, that was the worst decision I've ever made. Why did I do that? This is ridiculous. And not that I would have gone back, but I kind of regretted getting myself into that position.
Mm,
Now, what, 15, 16 years down the line, it's like, oh no, that was the very best decision I could have made. So our perception of where we are on our journey and how things fit in always change anyway.
mm.
And I think, going back to your previous question, if I can support and help people just clear some of the clutter so they are more at ease with that.
Yes.
And it's like we've made that decision, right? Move on. We can make a different decision. We can do this, we can do that. But that decision was, because I do find that quite often, we do have a tendency to kind of try to relive those decisions.
Yes. Yeah. Second guess ourselves and criticize ourselves and go back and
Oh, and if I hadn't done that,
yeah.
I would be doing this now, and
Yeah.
all my problems would have been solved. So every single problem that I'm experiencing now, I can trace back to that one decision. And if we can stop doing that a little bit, I think that
Yeah.
helps to create a much healthier and happier life, even just
And
that
I
one is.
think if we have a tendency to do that kind of thing, we have a tendency to do that when we're even trying to make a decision. Whatever, even small decisions, big decisions, it's literally like, I know for me, and one of my big seeings over the last 12 months has been this whole idea. I can see that I held this idea that if I get it right, everything will be all right. And if I get it wrong, it won't be. And I didn't realize how much of that I was still holding on to. But this idea that A, there was a right and wrong in that sense. And B, if I found it, everything would be right. In our business, in my relationship, in stuff, just kind of seeing that I had this thread that was like, yeah, if I do this right, everything will be fine. And if I do it wrong, it won't. And so then, holding myself really harshly to that and very much, oh yeah, you've got to get it right. And if anything appeared to be going wrong, it'd be, oh, well, there you go again, you've got it wrong. And this whole beating myself up, yeah. I'm really seeing, oh wow. And it's a really, really miserable way to live when we're doing that to us. It causes a lot of stress and whatever. But then just making your peace with, well, that was what looked like a really good idea then, with what I knew to be true, that looked like a good decision. And like you say, most of the time we can go, we get to be able to like you with the decision to leave. I'm sure at some point, if that had really felt like the wrong thing, you could have gone back or done something in that arena or
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's interesting that I didn't.
yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think it's really interesting how hooked up we get on whether something is right or wrong,
Yeah, yeah,
and what is that, and how do we even create that, that somehow that we can have this foresight or premonition about, oh, this is what is going to happen, and that's my kind of right. And if it doesn't happen in that way, then anything else is wrong.
Mm.
If it doesn't turn out the way that I think, then the decision was wrong. Or was it just that I guessed wrong? It was like, we never say that. We say the decision was wrong. No, actually, you're just really bad at guessing what's going to happen, But we don't often see that, do we? So we do have that lens of this decision has got to be right, or this step has got to be right.
Mm.
And even seeing that and just taking that pressure out of that equation
Yeah.
can be so helpful, you know? I mean, I'm not saying that in a business context you don't do your due diligence and you're not looking at your figures or your responsibility in whatever position that you're in. Of course, I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is sometimes these head tangles that we get in are so unhelpful when we have to do that.
Mm.
So noticing them and realizing, oh, I'm doing that whole right and wrong thing, and that's not helpful. So let's just kind of push that over there. So I can just look at, my finances, my finance sheet or whatever, and just make a almost like a transactional decision about this without any of the head stuff. Or oh, my gut actually feels like we need to do this. It's just a lot more freeing. And it's interesting because a lot of my clients use that word, it's freeing, it's empowering, it's because that's who we are in our true nature when we don't get confined by the restrictions of our own mind. We do feel a lot freer, we do feel a lot more empowered. And yeah, and that's a pretty good feeling to work in, I find, anyway.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Me too. Because I know for me as well, built into the right and wrong was um other people's opinion. And I know and sometimes when we're in that place where, we're the one that's got to make the decision and do the things, and then there are other people who have input and other people who have opinions and things like this, and then trying to do it right by keeping it. I mean, I really, really feel like running a business is very, very similar to a family, being a parent in a family. It's like I'm sitting here and I'm saying these things and I'm picturing, my kids and all of this, but it's the same kind of thing, isn't it? You absolutely want to get it right for the good of everybody. And then there are different people with different needs and different, this is true in a business, and whether it's what your business is providing in some way, because all businesses, whether it's a service or a physical product or something, we provide something. And so we're bothered about the people that we're providing this thing for and make sure this is right. And then we're bothered about the people, the staff or in that way, or anyone, whatever, in whatever way somebody gets involved in that sense. And it is this whole trying to juggle and take into account what those people think as well. And for me, then it is, I have found it so, so helpful to just learn to trust myself, listen. And it's like you say with looking at numbers and taking things, it's not about ignoring people. It's not, and very much, listen to what's going on for people, but then absolutely learning to trust my own inner knowing and my own inner guidance with, in this instance, this is what is right. And not going back to beat myself up for any of those moments, because I guess no matter what decision we make, like you say, it can play out, and the journey that comes afterwards can be, oh, brilliant decision, that was great, oh no, maybe you shouldn't have done, it can play out like this. And learning also, through understanding a deeper truth about myself, that that's all part and parcel of it too. And there's no necessity there to beat myself up or chastise myself or any of those kinds of things.
No, that's so true, isn't it? And I think as well, I've learned the hard way, I would say, that actually beating myself up doesn't change anything. Like it doesn't actually add anything at all. It's literally just making the moment I'm in now really deeply unpleasant. And
Yes.
then I'm never going to get that moment back either. So not only did I have like the bum decision that I now think is a bum decision, I'm now creating a really bum moment to, to go along with it. And so that, yeah, I try to limit that as much as I can. Once it's done, it's done. It's,
Mm.
there's little to be gained by going over it again. But it's really interesting about kind of
Yeah.
other people's influence, you know, and and that can be something I explore a lot with those that I work with.
Mhm.
Because you may have different board members, you may have mentors, you may have people who've in a similar business, you have peers, and and they all have their own two penny that they really want to share.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It always comes from a good place. People, I think as humans, most of the time, we want to be helpful. We want to avoid people going through unnecessary pain or making decisions that we don't think are good decisions. And understanding the nature of ourselves enables us to understand the nature of other people and how they operate. And the phrase that comes into mind is taking everything with a pinch of salt. It's like, okay, so this colleague may be full of doom and gloom, and say, well, this could happen, or this happened to me, or it happened to a colleague, and da di da di da di da di da doesn't necessarily mean that that is nailed on, that it will happen in your circumstance. It's taking it with that pinch of salt that,
Yeah.
okay, I respect that that is your experience. It's also your experience colored by the way you look at the world,
Yeah.
the
Yep.
narratives that you have, and the bits that you've pulled out in your mind to create that. But knowing all of that means that they're not having a premonition of the future. It's not something that yeah, that is going to dictate how things are going to turn out for you. There may be something in it. You might want to sit with their experience and see what comes up for you, as to whether it prompts some kind of insight about something. But again, using a lovely phrase that I use from Elsie Spittle, and I think I use it every day, countless times, which is hold it lightly, like hold other people's points of view lightly,
Yeah.
because then it enables us not to stop listening to our gut. It's like, okay, I respect your point of view and I respect how you see the world and I respect your experience. But even when I put that in the mix, I can still hear,
Mm.
how I'm being guided on this and what feels right for me. But I think sometimes we can be completely derailed by what somebody says. And that's when it becomes a bit of an issue. When we don't really understand that, especially if it's somebody who we perceive has more experience or has more qualifications, or maybe they've been in business longer than us or whatever. Then all of a sudden we hear it and say, oh my goodness, I don't know anything at all, when this person has said X, Y, Z and all the letters of the alphabet, and we can't do this, it totally derails us. So understanding more about the nature of that enables us to hold it lightly, light enough for us to simply kind of put it in the mix, but know what it is. That it's not going to predict the future. Yeah. And I think sometimes, especially, if you're of a certain age, obviously I'm only like 26, but when you're of a certain
Me
age,
too, obviously. We're
absolutely.
60 conversations for my 60th birthday. Obviously, I'm only 26.
No, no, 60 conversations because you just wanted to have 60
Absolutely.
conversations.
Absolutely.
But when you have traveled through life a little bit, sometimes when people share the experience, oh, you don't want to do that because this could happen. and then it does, it feels like they predicted the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. It can feel like, oh yeah, they were right. So they must have known something I didn't know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. They've got an in, like they're in on a game that I'm not in on.
Yes.
You know, they must know more. They must be more seasoned, more wise. They've got more wisdom than me. And actually, it was just, yeah, that was how it was going to turn out. And so even kind of like knowing that, and I've had conversations over the years with people who like, work in risk and all sorts of things, that kind of thing, obviously lawyers and accountants, people who do facts and figures and
Mm,
this can be a bit of a tangle sometimes because it's like, well, but we know it's a 60% chance of this, or it's a 90% chance of that. But it's kind of knowing that, well, not everything is nailed on.
yeah. Yeah.
And so what do you listen to? You've got the odds stacked against you. And we see this all the time. The odds are stacked against somebody, but they've listened to their gut and their gut has said, no, do this. And
Mm,
they've done it.
yeah.
And it's defied those odds.
Mm,
And it's when that happens, you think, okay, there must be something else going on here.
mm, mm, yeah. And it is, I guess, learning to lean into and trust that, isn't it? And like you say, it's not about like we have an intellect and we have an intellect for a good reason. And it's not like this conversation is saying, so just ignore your intellect all of the time. It's not, but it is, I know for me, I can see that for whatever reason, I got to a point of never listening to any inner knowing or very, very rarely being guided by it. I would know something and then almost deliberately override it. It's like, no, I'm not good enough to that can't I can't have got that right or whatever. Um, and I guess this conversation is bringing that back into the mix and saying, actually, there really is a place. And I know, often a business can be one of those places where we think, well, we can't bring spirituality and this, what is this woo-woo thing that although there's a 90% chance that this will happen,
Yeah.
we can defy all the odds. Somebody recover from stage 4 terminal cancer. It happens. And or whatever it is, we make this completely out the park decision that looks absolutely ridiculous. But there it is, it turns out to be a great thing that we did. But it is like, it feels like bringing that back into the mix and seeing how our intellect and our gut feeling, our inner knowing, our spirituality, whatever you want to call it, they're great bedfellows actually. And they make, on all sides, if we can take these things into account, it can make our life much, much richer, I feel.
And simpler. But
Yeah.
it's interesting, isn't it? Because to kind of think our default is, oh, well, there's no room for this in business,
Yeah.
right? There's no room for, you can't talk about spirituality in business. No, of course we don't talk about spirituality, but you get a room of 100 business owners and you talk about gut feeling and they go, yeah, absolutely, always trust my gut. I trust my gut on recruitment. I trust my gut on my next decision. I trust my gut.
Yeah.
It's the label. It's the same thing. It's that inner knowing. It's that quieter voice. It's that, however you want to describe it, the drama queen that's going on that so often gets fueled by everything else,
Mm,
you know? And I think it's knowing that when you trust your gut, it will be okay. Like you will be okay. Yeah. So what popped in my head when you were talking is the Steve Jobs quote that, the dots will always connect. You can't connect the dots going forward. You have to look backwards and you'll see that the dots connect. So you have to trust in something, basically.
yeah.
The dots will connect. And I often kind of talk about this, that if you trust your gut, right, you will not know what the outcome is going to be because none of us do. We can hazard a really good guess.
Yeah,
And sometimes we're right and sometimes we're not. And sometimes it surprises us.
yeah,
But you will be okay. And further down the line, there's a really good chance you'll look back and go, oh, okay. I thought that was an absolute show, but I can see now if that hadn't have happened, then that wouldn't have happened, and da
yeah,
da 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 da. Or if I hadn't done that, that person would have done X, Y, and Z, and now look at them. There's stuff we don't know,
yes, very much so. Yeah,
and without getting a bit too kind of airy-fairy about it, but I see that, and the people I talk to see that.
yes.
And I think we all know that, but we don't like to admit it because it really doesn't sound very intellectual, does it? It's like, but it's got to be more complicated than that.
You sort of can't take exams in that, really, can you? You
No,
know?
you can't. You can't. It's like we all know.
Mm,
So knowing that it takes the pressure off, right? If you knew that you were going to be okay no matter what decision you made, you'd figure it out.
yeah, yes,
You'd
yes,
sleep better at night. You go, well, I'll just make a decision. I'll go to sleep tonight. I'll probably be better if I have a good night's sleep.
yeah.
But often the fact that we don't know that we're going to be okay, that's what keeps us awake.
Yeah, that goes back to that whole, doesn't it? If I get this right, I'll be okay. If I get this wrong, I won't be okay. And so I've got to make the right decision. And then we just go backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. And often decisions can have, there can be good and bad in, we can, if even if you're weighing up the odds or whatever you're doing, you can go, oh yeah, and talk ourselves into this one and then think, yeah, okay, I'm going to make that. Oh my gosh, but what if it's wrong and this and this and this and this, and then talk the other one up kind of thing. And it is like, yeah. And in that, we can just lose all connection to we can confuse ourselves so much that we stop hearing our gut feeling or those kinds of things. We stop knowing what it is.
Yeah, because we think we're making we're making a decision whilst we're weighing up and doing all of this like mental gymnastics in our head because we've been educated that that is how you make a decision.
Yes.
But how many times have we gone through that process of, well, I've done my SWOT analysis and I've done my fors and against and my strengths and weaknesses or whatever. And I've stayed awake all night and I've gone all the way around the houses and everything. And then you've decided to make whatever decision it is and you've made it. And the outcome has been something you have never even contemplated. Like it's just something you could never have imagined, you know? Or or you think the world's going to explode and you make the decision and no one notices and nothing happens. And you're like, well,
Yeah.
I wasted like 3 weeks of my life overthinking that one. It was like a non-decision. It was, it was all like it. So you start kind of reflecting back on that. And you think, okay, well, how much of that thinking is actually useful and helpful? And what else could I use that energy for?
Yeah, because pretty much if something, you can pretty much Google things. And if it's not that, it's kind of think, well, there's no point overthinking it then, really. If there's a decision to make and there's some facts or something you need to know, you can ask the right person or Google it or something like that. Find those facts, decide, and that's it. But yeah, that whole backward and forwarding and getting it right and overthinking and over worrying and oh gosh, yeah.
Well, because I think quite a lot of things, and I hope this doesn't seem like I'm contradicting myself as I say this, but quite a lot in business you can distill down to some key kind of things that you need to look at, to make sure that you're making a diligent decision.
Mm,
You look at your cash flow, you might look at your financial forecast. There may be stuff there that as a director of the business, you have responsibilities to look at. But to me, that's transactional.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's all the other stuff that kind of gets in the way.
Yeah.
The, oh, but what if this happens and da 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 da. Before you know it, you're 2 years down the line, someone's homeless, you're probably pushing up the daisies somewhere. I don't know, but you've taken it to an extreme. Or you've reflected it back onto yourself and you're saying, oh, this means I'm such and such a person, or I'm this, or I'm not good at that, or whatever. And it's that stuff
Yeah.
to me is really unhelpful. A decision at the end of the day is like, you do this or you do that.
And
You know,
there we
either way,
go.
you will
Yeah.
be okay. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
either way, stuff will then happen,
Yeah.
right? And you will figure it out
Mm,
and you will still be alive to tell the tale.
mm, yeah. One of the things that occurred to me that over the years I have just found so helpful, not long after I came across the principles, and I can't even remember exactly what, but I was just in a pretty difficult place, and it just occurred to me to kind of get still for a minute and sort of say, well, am I actually okay here? Because my head was going crazy. Um,
Mm.
and when I got still and asked the question, and there was all sorts of things going on, it was like, well, am I okay? And in that stillness, the answer came back, yes. And I've seen that, with things in our business, we've had times where we've thought, oh my gosh, we're not going to, oh, we're not bringing in enough this month, or whatever, these sorts of things, or, all sorts of things, because things happen, don't they? When you run a business, tons and tons of things. And definitely there have been moments, in my personal life, in our business, all of those. And it has been every time when I've got stressed or anything and felt that, if I just get still and genuinely ask myself that question in a deeper place in me, well, am I okay? And I can see that it's only my head going, oh my gosh, you're not going to be able to pay this, and then this is going to happen, and then that's going to happen, and then that's going to, oh my word, and this person will think that, and that person won't do this, and this person will do that, whatever. And then if it just gets quiet and it's like, well, just am I okay in this moment? And pretty much most of the time I'm sort of sat at my desk and I've got something for lunch, or I've had my lunch, or I'm not cold, and it's kind of like, well, yeah, you're okay. And I can see no matter what it's been, and that to me is the whole. There is going to be a way in which you're going to be okay, no matter what this is. You will be okay. And if you touch base with that in you, and that has really helped me trust myself in those moments, and it's just been like, right, yeah, just go with it. And how many times, in conversations I've had with people, whether it's been a decision or whether it's just been something that's happened in their life, that seems to not be anything to do with them, so many things that we think we wouldn't choose, or if we could go and decide again, we would do it differently, actually turn out to be the things like you said, well, actually, if I hadn't have been through that, I wouldn't have learned this, then I wouldn't have known that, then that would have happened.
Yeah, 100%. We're always okay. And I think that's, it's such a powerful thing to notice. When you were talking there, what came to my mind is, on a physiological sense, we know that we have a part of our brain that tries to keep us safe, but it's there for saber-toothed tigers and making sure that other people don't attack us. Well, hopefully, that won't happen in a modern day, sat at our desk doing our work or a networking event or whatever it is that we choose to be, well, we're giving a presentation or whatever. But it's that part of the brain that is active a lot of the time.
Yeah,
I constantly will come up against people who are in fight or flight. They are stressed.
yeah,
And in their world, metaphorically speaking, they are being chased by saber-toothed tigers left, right, and center. They're being attacked by people and they are under attack and their bodies are responding to that. So they feel they're not going to be okay. Like their lives are in danger. I do a lovely exercise on one of my programs called Courageous Females, and it's kind of like consequences, like if you take this decision, what do you think is going to happen, if it doesn't go right?
Mm.
And most of the time people end up in a cardboard box.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, now you can see what part of your brain you're using
Yeah.
to make decisions with.
Yes.
Right? You're probably the most uneducated part of your brain. It's like if you have your pea brain, it's like the bit that isn't very complex,
Mm.
you know? So noticing that and thinking, okay, I get that feeling. Like that's a feeling within me of when I feel under attack or when I feel like my life is at stake. I'm now not grounded to make this decision. I'm not in the right gear, going back to our car analogy right at the
Yeah.
beginning. I'm now like not in the right gear for this, right? I need to be in the right gear. And that can be enormously freeing because it's like, oh no, I'm going to be okay. We'll figure it out. Like it's going to be okay.
I mean, it's Marie Forleo, isn't it, who does a lot of business stuff, who says everything is figure outable,
Oh,
figureable outable, you know.
yeah, yeah. Well, before she said it, that's what my dad used to say. So that's like one of my donkey years. It's figure it
Yeah.
out. Figure it out. You
Yeah.
figure it out, you know? And we do.
Yeah.
One of my biggest things is that we are built for the unknown
Yes.
because we have to be, because nobody knows what the future holds. So it has to be integral into the design that we have to be able to figure out whatever is thrown at us. And so seeing that, it just takes the pressure off.
Yeah. And then when the pressure is off and the stress is off, we can, it's everything is so much easier.
Yeah, because we're connected to our, for want of a better, we're connected to our common sense. We can see it just seems simple. I always remember Sid saying, that the wisdom is simple, it's straightforward, and the ego makes things complicated, and it's like, yeah, as soon as all of that settles down, the
Mhm.
sim the simplicity of that decision comes forward. Because then it starts to feel like a no-brainer. So, well, of course we would do this because you've stripped everything else out.
Mhm. I do think sometimes that is almost a part of the problem, like you say, definitely with the intellect can make that a problem because it's like, well, it can't be that simple.
But then you just, once you've made the decision, this is the flippant part. When you made the decision, you can then let your intellect just make up the story that backs up the decision because it can complicate it up again. But make it when you're in a more grounded, more grounded place.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's we are crazy, aren't we, as human beings? How and at one point when you were talking, and talking about other people, and I remember for me, like the first time, this is going back a long time now, but the first time somebody told me, talked to me about separate realities, how, no two people see the exact same thing, think in the exact same way, have the exact same experience of life. And like that was like, why? I was way into adulthood, and it was like, I had never seen that, never worked that out. And then when somebody told me and I kind of played around with it a bit and looked, that was a game changer for me to realize, because definitely coming at life with the belief, well, Andrea is seeing the exact same thing as me. So given this information, she's going to make the same decision, because she's exactly the same as me.
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
was so confusing. I think for a long time, it was so confusing to me why people didn't agree, whether it was agree with me or generally speaking, why don't we always agree on everything? And the reason that we don't always agree on everything, and the reason that we make different decisions, and the reason that, it's a good idea to learn to trust ourselves and go on our own path and be ourselves, is because, yeah, we are all unique aspects of the one divine expressing itself here. So, we're
Mm.
not meant to all live in the exact same, see the same thing and think the same way. But just knowing that, no one told me that when I was a kid growing up. And,
No, no one told me that. I mean, I was well into my 40s
yeah,
before I was even exposed to that. And then it took me a while for me to really
yeah.
accept it,
Mm,
for it really to kind of like, for me to, for my ego to get out of the way and go, oh, okay. Yeah. But that in itself can be enormously freeing once you see that, because then you realize how, well, you start to see how transient your experience is and how much it can change, and then you think, oh, so that is the same for other people too. So I'm telling myself that person thinks X, Y, and Z about me, but actually they might have thought that 3 years ago, but they've slept since then. And they probably haven't even thought about me since then, let alone go into that experience, and so enabling yourself to kind of just let go of what other people think, because you never know. It's like another fruitless exercise, isn't it? It's like, why am I even trying to fathom this out? Because I'm never going to get a definitive answer
When we
because
when
it's
we look at how
changeable.
much I was going to say, when we look at how much our own thinking changes, and then we're trying to work out what someone else is thinking about the
100%.
person, what with, it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, it's a total road to nowhere.
Absolutely. And so then you kind of put in the mix, as you were saying, well, their viewpoints on a particular decision or anything. You have no idea what they've put in the mix there, or what insecurities or what fears, or you just don't know,
No, no, you can't.
right?
Mm. So
Because it's going to be as unique as yours is. And so that's why I say, yeah, you can listen, but you have to be in on the game of what it is that you're taking into account.
mm.
It's no better quality than yours. But we always hold other people in a much higher kind of state. Oh, they must know with it. No, there is, yeah. As unique and wonderful and weird as we are, and they've got that going on in just the same way.
Mm. And I love how we all, in our own unique ways are called to do the things that we do. It's
Mm.
the ideas that we have, the things that come to us, the things that I mean, Beck and I often look at our business and everything, and then we kind of go, whatever, however many years ago, none of this even existed, and we totally made it up. And we
Ah,
totally like come to the office and play offices every day and have plenty to do. And it's like, oh my gosh, that was all just created through the ideas, this amazing gift of thought that we have. And the oh gosh, it blows my mind that, and you see that, okay, that's like we've got a small business in, the back room of our house. But you see that that's true of huge institutes.
mhm.
Somebody had an idea about something, and that was all created out of it, out of those ideas. So I just love that we get to have these ideas and follow those nudges and our inner knowing and create in this way. It's so exciting.
It really is. And I would say, yeah, the vast majority of my clients are what I would call accidental
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, in that they had an idea.
Yeah.
And they just ran with it. And then they got a couple of staff, and then they got a couple more staff. And then before they knew it, it just grew and grew and grew. And I love that. I love that I'm able to work more in the kind of creative kind of industry, if you like, that those that are changing and innovating and yeah, just it's really, really exciting. And to be able to help them quieten down so they can tap into that even more is just a joy. But when you were talking there, and I was thinking and reflecting back on my own family. So obviously my children are growing up now, they're in their early teens, early 20s. And I think, oh, when I was their age, we didn't even have mobile phones,
No.
you know. And so if you tap me on the shoulder, when I was my son's age, I was collecting rent in the middle of Swindon, if you tap me on the shoulder and go, oh, okay, well, in a few years down the road, and when your family is older, you'll be a coach and you'll be coaching people like on video link, like Star Trek. And you'll
Yeah.
have a master's in psychology, and you would have practiced as a barrister for 10 years, and you would have had all this journey. I would have gone, are you nuts? Like, what are you even talking about? But all of that comes from innovation.
Yes,
All
yeah.
of that comes from creativity. Somebody had an idea and they ran with it, and then somebody had another idea, and somebody had another idea, and da 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 da. I mean, I think, wasn't it going back to like Steve Jobs? He was like, "Oh, I want everyone to have music in their pocket." I mean, it was an idea, you know. So seeing that about ourselves and seeing that that is integral. We know that you can't teach somebody creativity.
We're born to create.
If we're born to evolve,
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
and that is part of our psychology,
Mm,
is to evolve, is to listen to this,
mm,
this thing that moves us forward, this wisdom that moves us forward. And yes, we do have part of us, our intellect, that helps store knowledge and helps keep us safe. That's important too.
mm,
But it works all in synergy and it works together. And seeing that balance and how it can work in this wonderful harmony is where, for me, that's where the magic happens.
mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I could keep talking to you forever. No, that was awesome. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you
Thank
so
you.
much. I've loved our conversation. It's
Me
been,
too.
it's been really
On all
lovely.
sorts of places, but yeah, that's
I
been
know.
so if people wanted to reach out to you, wanted to know more about what you do, where could they find you? I mean, I will put this in the show notes, but where could people find you if they want to know more about you?
So you can have a little look on my website. So that's andreamorrison.co.uk. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
That's just Andrea Morrison. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, but I predominantly kind of hang out on LinkedIn. But you do see me around on other social media too.
Oh, oh. So thank you so much for this amazing conversation. It was, yeah, a really good and a nice dive into the business aspect of this, because I think very often, like you say, spirituality is a place, a business and spirituality can be one of those places, love and business, and those, these words, we don't put them together. And I think definitely I'm seeing the evolution of that. I don't think that is as true now as it was 10 years ago and 10 years before those. And I'm sure in 10 years' time, it'll be completely different again. So
I'm sure it will. But no, thank you. It's been lovely.
thank you so much. Thank you.